Okay, good evening. This is the Coeur d'Alene Planning and Zoning Commission, and this is our August hearing. It's Tuesday, August 9th. I guess it is. Yep, it's the 9th. So, Shanna, would you do the roll call, please?
Jordan?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Messina?
Here.
Rumpler?
Here.
Ward?
Here.
Okay, thanks, Shanna. Next, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so next thing on our list is the approval of minutes from the July 12th meeting.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion by Lutrip,
I'll second that.
second by Fleming. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, next, this is our time for public comments. If you're here to comment on one of the items that we're hearing tonight, then there'll be some time to testify at that. But if you have an item of general nature you want to address the commission on, this would be the time to come on up and address us. All right, seeing none. Now we're off to staff comments. Hillary?
Good evening, Commissioners. So a couple items. The September 13th Planning Commission meeting, there's one public hearing scheduled, so it'll be a little bit lighter. We have a subdivision request that'll be coming forward. We are making some good progress on that vacation rental ordinance. It is going to be circulated internally for some review and input from departments. Then we will distribute it to the stakeholders and also schedule a workshop with the Planning Commission and invite city council members to participate if they'd like to. That way we'll get some early input before we go through the hearing process on that. And then lastly, if you remember last year we did the Parking It on Sherman event, the block party. So this year we're doing that again, September 16th and 17th, working with our partners to get that coordinated. This year it'll be on the 1200 block, so between 12th and 13th Streets, where the Peterson's is now the Lakeside Harvest Food store. They've agreed to have some of that event in their parking lot, as well as McAllister Technical in their Pocket Park. And we're working with the businesses and residents along that stretch. So we'll give you more updates and details as we have them. Thanks.
That sounds great. Thank you, Hillary. Any commissioner comments? All right. So we have an administrative item to start with. The applicant is the Marina Yacht Club LLC, and the location is the property immediately southwest of the Blackwell Island RV Park. The address is 800 South Marina Drive. And this request is for the removal of the Blackwell Island Marina Yacht Club property from the RV Park PUD and special use permit. So this is administrative item PUD-1-97 SP.M. So apparently the RV park went in 97. I remember it, just don't remember what year as I get older and my memory fades.
Just like to start off by saying there's three items before the board tonight. One is an administrative item that that's just coming right next, but the other two are public hearings. One's for an annexation and the other one's for the PUD. So there'll be findings after each one of those.
So this is the easy one.
This is, PUD 1-97-SP.M. Application by Marina Yacht Club LLC requesting the subject property of Blackwell Island RV Park PUD and special use permit to be removed. On property located immediately southwest of Blackwell Island at 800 South Marina Drive. The PUD and special use permit removal does not require a public hearing and can be done administratively. This is the location map of the property. As you can see, this is where it's located on the Spokane Rivers here. This is the lake down here, and this is the subject property. The original 1997 PUD this is the area that signifies what was approved in 1997 of the RV park. The subject property today before you to be removed is this piece right here. As you can see, the Marina Drive location's here, and everything is southwest of the RV park. If it is approved, the zoning underneath the layer would look like this. It'd be C-17 zoning, and the PUD would remain with the RV park, and the C-17 would remain there. And remove the subject property from Blackwell Island, RV park, PUD, and special use permit. Findings are not required, so this action can be completed by a vote from the Planning Commission to either approve or deny it. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, any questions of staff?
About how many acres is there?
It's about, I think it's 10 acres.
Okay. This is a process question. I'm not. So when the city forms a PUD, there's certain criteria that the use of the property can be modified in some fashion through the PUD process, and there's commitments on both the city's part and the property owner's part. And there was, I assume, commitments on that PUD for the entire parcel that was there. And how can the part we're exempting now was that not part of the PUD? Did not have some conditions on it, open space or whatnot, something?
The only part of the PUD was the part of the RV park and north, everything within the city limits.
Everything was what?
Everything north of here was part of the RV park. And they've met all the requirements, and this has been vacant ever since.
They've met all the requirements for all the land or just for the RV park?
All the requirements for the RV park.
So you can get a PUD and you can subdivide it in some fashion by the property owner by saying, I want to put a PUD in this 300 acres, but as time goes on, you say, gee, I'm only going to do 200 acres.
Sometimes PUDs aren't completed and they don't finish them out. Sometimes a subdivision will start and the economy may change and they may not be able to complete it or finish it, so they will sell part of that off and they will not need to have it done.
So we've done this before, but my question is process. We go through a rather elaborate process to approve a PUD. We go through a rather elaborate process to modify a PUD, and it just is interesting we don't go through an elaborate process, meaning public hearing, that we don't have a public hearing on discontinuing.
We would have a public hearing if we were going to expand it. If we were going to expand this PUD in any way, then it would be a public hearing. But to remove part of it, that can be done administratively because it's shrinking the size. You're not increasing the intensity.
So when we have future PUDs come before us in modifications, that the property owner can say, gee, in this modification, I want to take this number of acres and delete it from the PUD. And we can do that administratively?
Yeah, yes, you can. And my understanding is that all of the conditions of the original PUD have been met by the property that is going to remain within the PUD. So the detachment of this section of the PUD will not affect any of the conditions that were imposed on the PUD as a whole.
So that property we're exempting, that did have some PUD conditions on it, did it not?
Well, the whole property had PUD conditions, for example, open space, but they don't need that section to comply with the conditions.
I'm sorry, I don't track that.
Well, all of the conditions are satisfied in the RV park, all of the conditions of the original PUD. So the detachment of this section will not render that portion of the RV park in violation of the PUD conditions.
So this parcel did not have any PUD conditions on it?
It wasn't divided out separately, but it's not needed for any of the conditions.
It's not divided out.
The conditions applied to the whole area that's mapped as the PUD, but the PUD was vague in there when they submitted with the PUD. It was more specific where it's been built out for the RV park. The other area was showing more future buildings. It wasn't a critical component of the project. Since that time, then the ownership changed and the lot has been split off, and the conditions is Randy was mentioning have been satisfied. And so it was our review, I reviewed it with Randy, and we determined that it met the criteria that we'd done in the past for just removing it administratively if that was the pleasure of the commission.
Just for clarification, so I take it when the PUD came in, they had a plan to have so many RV spots and hookups and sewer hookups and everything else. And that particular parcel that they're asking to take out of that PUD, I would assume had no indication of having any RV spots or anything on there, and plus it wasn't designated as open space, let's say, if that was where an RV park has or doesn't have at that time. So that parcel was just designated in the PUD as a piece of land that had no use whatsoever, but it didn't take away from open space, let's say, hookups, RVs, power, and all that stuff. That would be my interpretation of it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, thanks.
John's got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, another question. Since, it's my sense here, I guess that since the original PUD 1-97 SP, we see that ownership has changed. RV expansion is DOA. Clean slate just makes sense. So with that, I would make a motion for removal of the subject property from the Blackwell Island RV Park PUD and special use permit.
Now, okay, I didn't know you were going to make a motion, but just hold that thought a minute. So I've got someone signed up here that wants to testify.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought this was not a hearing.
Well,
Yeah, Shanna had provided a sign-in sheet. Was that intended for everyone or for the applicant to have the opportunity to present? For anybody? Okay.
I guess even though it's administrative, people can talk if they want to, right? So I probably should see if they still want to testify, right? So hold that thought on your motion.
Got it.
Okay, so the first person, I have two people. Is it Tom or Tim? I can't read the last name. The pen faded out here.
Holt?
Yeah, I can't tell.
P-U-L-T, Holt? No show?
Okay,
Ask the person to stand up if he wants to testify.
well, no one's done. Okay. Then I have Matthew Hall. Is that right? Would you like to testify?
Yes.
Yeah, come on up. Just state your name and address there for the record.
Yeah, my name is Matthew Hall, 800 South Marina Drive, Coeur d'Alene.
I don't know.
I'm representing the Hall family. We are the owners of Blackwell Island RV Park. We're requesting as a condition of the removal of the PUD section across Marina Drive, that the property line between the Hall's property and the Hagedorn Corporation property be properly recorded to reflect the true and correct location of Marina Drive. The property line runs down the center of Marina Drive and from Highway 95 over to Old Highway 95. We need to file a corrected property line that would describe the true location of Marina Drive as it was constructed when Blackwell Island RV Resort was built as a planned unit development. Marina Drive was repositioned and rebuilt during the construction of the RV park as a condition of the PUD. This helped with traffic flow by making Marina Drive angle at a 90-degree to Highway 95. However, when the marina and the surrounding properties on Blackwell Island were sold to Hagedorn Corporation, the survey numbers used in that sales agreement were not accurate. This error occurred because the survey numbers were just copied from an outdated title. The relocation of Marina Drive on its current location was approved in City PUD, I believe, 3-95. The current location of Marina Drive existed before the purchase of the marina by the Hagedorn Corporation, and the correct verbal description was used in the sales agreement. The property line is described as the center of Marina Drive. The Hall family has tried to correct this title error for approximately 9 years. The Hagedorn Corporation has not signed the completed corrected survey. We believe it is in best interest of all parties, the City of Coeur d'Alene, the Hall family, and the Hagedorn Corporation to correct this error before granting approval. We'd also like to say that we are in favor of the removal of the PUD from that property on the other side of Marina Drive.
Okay. Anything you can elaborate on, staff?
Regarding the title error and boundary line, that information? Well, that's something that really is more of a civil matter and can be addressed through the two parties, and they can work with the county and city engineering to address that. It sounds like it is of concern, but it doesn't really relate to the request that's before you this evening.
Yeah, I understand their situation, but I'm sitting here wondering, we don't really have the power in this body to order the correction of a title error or a survey error. So, okay. So the matter we're here for is just the removal of the PUD. Okay. All right, so I'm not sure what we can do on that.
So are you removing it to the center of Marina Drive or just to the center of a questioned property line?
Based on the legal description of the property that's owned by, the Hagedorn Corporation, the Marina Yacht Club, as provided. And the applicant may be able to speak to that as well.
Does that answer it?
The verbal description is the center of Marina Drive, but the surveyed numbers are incorrect.
Mr. Chair, I'm certainly not in a position to adjudicate something like this. It seems to me that our matter for us is where that should or should not be part of the PUD. And if the individual if there's a question on the seller or buyer's part, the property description, so forth, I think that's a matter out of our hands. And there's something called title insurance and other things. I feel for you, but it's not a matter I can certainly feel comfortable.
Well, the question was where does it remove it to? So I guess that's the answer for what we have here to deal with tonight.
Mike's going to pull the map up, and then maybe it would be helpful to have the applicant or engineer. Would that be helpful?
Will that map work? Okay.
If you could go to the other slide, kind of shows it a little bit better.
You need to address it from the microphone, please.
Okay. One more, right there.
Okay, you can use this mouse and the screen's right there if you want to look.
So yeah, right here on the proposed removal section, as it comes down Marina Drive, this section here comes out into the RV park. These are going through sites where you can't even see Marina Drive, where this line should be more over here in the center of Marina Drive, all the way down out to Highway 95.
I would like to clarify, Commissioners, one thing, Mike was telling me for the mapping for this exhibit, it's really just based on the GIS exhibit, and the plat lines don't always line up with the aerial map, and so that could have also shifted it to make it look like it's even further into their property. That's not necessarily an exactly accurate depiction on the screen.
Well, is there any likelihood that, and I understand how these GIS maps are, sometimes they're pretty right on and sometimes they're off a little bit, but is there any problem, for instance, if we do this removal and it does run through part of the RV park, that it makes it non-conforming? Is there a problem that needs to be addressed before we do this, or where does that leave it?
The section that's to be removed from the PUD is under separate ownership, and so I think the area that you're being asked to separate from the PUD has been sold, and I would assume that the legal description from the sale of that property is the same as the legal description before you on the removal from the PUD.
Okay, so because of that, you're feeling pretty certain that that wouldn't be getting into any of the Marina property then, because it's based on that legal description and not the GIS line that's out, that we're seeing on the map there. Okay. All right. Does anyone else want to testify on this matter before we vote on it?
I'd like to testify.
Okay, come on down, state your name and address.
My name is Ann Hall. I'm the owner of Blackwell Island RV Park, and it's a pleasure to speak with you today. It's been a long time. It took 3.5 years to get our project up and running, so I was here a lot and spoke to a lot of people. This map here shows, as you got it up, it's taken out 6 of our sites right here, okay? So if this is approved according to this map, I'm going to have to remove 6 sites. And if you go to the other map,
Sorry, let me get on this side here real quick. That's the maps.
okay,
This
when
one or this one?
the other one that you had up, that one. So when Robert Hall sold the Marina and the Yacht Club, in that agreement, there was a division of that we would keep half of Marina Drive, Blackwell Island RV Park, and Hagedon Corporation would keep the other half. That was described, in verbally. And also, when we went to sign the papers, and we weren't part of that, the negotiations or whatever, that they pulled up, the title company pulled up the wrong description before 1998, when we changed the direction of Marina Drive, okay? So we have contacted John Magnuson, and we had him help us straighten out this legally, and we have done the paperwork correctly. It has been sitting on the Hagedon Corporation's desk since 2008. They have acknowledged that the survey that we had done in 2008 matched what the PUD was in 1998. But yet they will not sign that paperwork. So I'm skeptical about, if you pull up the other map and it shows that line taking out 6 of my RV sites, is that what they're going to go on? Or are they going to go down the middle of Marina Drive from 1998? So all I want to do is have due diligence done, not just rubber stamp it. Don't get the cart before the horse kind of thing, and do due diligence here.
Okay. So you heard her concerns. I heard what she said before she spoke. Is there, what do you think we have here? Is there a possibility of that, or do you know which legal description they're going by? What do you suggest here?
Well, I think we should hear from the applicant, and then we can talk about
Okay.
if there are still any concerns regarding the proper legal description of what is being asked to be removed from the PUD.
Okay. So,
No motion. Do we hear?
well, he's coming up right now.
Oh, right now.
I'm John Barlow. I'm with JRB Properties LLC, representing the Hagedon Companies. We're not prepared to address this because, as you know, this wasn't going to be addressed. We purchased the property in 2004, and a legal description was prepared based on the survey done by the Hall family when they developed their property and did their PUD. Sometime in the last, I'd say around 2006, when we were in front of you with a PUD annexation, it was discovered thereafter that there's an error. Well, I think Mrs. Hall actually enlightened me when she mentioned that they moved the road to a different location with the PUD, but they failed to move the property line. And the intention of the purchase was the road. And we have been trying to resolve it all this time. And all I can say is there's two sides to every story. The intention tonight is to remove the PUD to the road. And we intend to resolve the property line issue, but it's our opinion, and I believe it was your opinion, and the city staff, legal staff opinion, that it really isn't a matter that affects the decision you have as P&Z, because it's a question of the PUD. But there hasn't been a total agreement on the terms and conditions of adjusting the line, which was an error from the survey produced by the Hall family sometime in the past, probably when they did the PUD. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Chair, we're
Anything?
removing the PUD. We don't care who the owner is. It's not, we're indifferent to the ownership. I mean, if the ownership is even split, the question before us is to remove the PUD. And if it affects two property owners, yeah, so be it. They'll have to work out who owns what. But it seems to me the matter is just, is it or is it not to be removed, regardless who the ownership is.
One more piece of comment is that both parties are in the city and have been in the city since the time of the PUD approval. They're not a part of the proceedings we're going to have later with annexation. So it's a matter within the city property.
Well, maybe I misspoke. Can we go forward with the second part of this if the ownership is still in dispute and part of the PUD?
No, I'm just trying to point out that none of this property is in the county. It's all in the city.
Okay.
The concern is that the property you are removing or proposing to remove from the PUD is described by a legal description. If there's a dispute about the legal description, then I'm not sure how we can go forward unless we know what property is going to be removed and what property is not. So if that line is going to be moved one side or the other, the legal description is incorrect.
Well, and you as the attorney are paid the big dollars to make legal recommendations on what course we should be taking when these kind of things come up. And I appreciate having you here. So what's your recommendation on taking action on this tonight?
Excuse me.
I think we all understand it's the legal description, not the GIS map, but is there an error that would, I guess the concern of the Halls, is there an error that would put part of this over the RV park and make it non-conforming, then we have to do a fix to that later.
Well, and the only issue with that would be who owns that property. If the property line goes through some of their lots, that's something between the neighboring property owners. I think the commission can vote to remove that portion of the PUD that is now owned by the Hagedorn Corporation, and we can, fuss about the legal description if there's a need to do that.
Okay. All right.
How do we define ownership when it's in dispute?
We don't, the
Excuse me?
court does.
What was the question?
You said we could take action based on the Hagedorn.
Hagedorn purchased that property that's being removed. My understanding is that the entirety of that property that was purchased by Hagedorn is going to be removed from the PUD. It's a legal
And so
lot.
if the seller has a concern that it's improperly surveyed, that's a matter between the seller and the Hagedorn Corporation through some
Correct.
legal process.
Yeah, so the
So
bigger
the property
question.
is a separate lot and has a lot designation in the county records. So you can remove that lot from the PUD.
So the other question, over and above whether or not the PUD removal could slide over a little bit into the operation of the RV park, the bigger question is just who owns the land. But the action tonight is just on the property the Hagedorn Corporation owns.
Correct, or that particular parcel that's identified in county
Right.
records.
Okay. So you were working on a motion.
I would reiterate the motion, and I guess I'll say, with respect to the property owned by the applicant, I would make a motion for removal of the subject property from the Blackwell Island RV Park PUD and special use permit.
And we can identify the parcel number AIN 246136.
So you read that into the record?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Messina. Motion by Ingalls. Any discussion? Okay, and this is a simple vote, right? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay. So then that's approved. Removal of, whatever this is, administrative PUD-1-97 SP, removal of that particular portion of the PUD. Okay, then we have a couple of public hearings tonight. And these public hearings are quasi-judicial, so that means we have a little more of a strict format in these. And so the staff will do a staff report, and then the applicant will have up to 30 minutes if they so need the 30 minutes. And then members of the public will have 5 minutes to testify. And when you come up to testify at the podium here, I need you to state your name and address, and then I'll have to swear you in briefly. And then the applicant will have some time for rebuttal. And does anyone have a conflict to declare on this item? Okay. And then I've been asked to ask who our guest is over here. Oh, okay. Thanks. Nice to have you. Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
yours,
you,
Sean.
Chairman Jordan.
Oh, I guess I didn't read this. I better read this into the record. Active West Builders is the applicant on this hearing. It's between John Loop and West Riverstone Drive, 11-lot residential pocket housing preliminary plat, Riviera Court, C17, commercial, and R17. This is quasi-judicial S-5-16. Okay, so we're through all that. It's all yours, Sean.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Chairman. So as Chairman Jordan described, the request tonight is for an 11 lot and the associated tracts for pocket housing, a subdivision request tonight. The approximate size of the property is 1.325 acres. It is located in Riverstone West, 3rd Edition, between Riverstone Drive and John Loop. So they are constructing, they're planning to construct a pocket housing development that has a dedicated right-of-way that runs through it, although it is what we would consider not a through street or a dead-end street with a turnaround. I've learned a few times by listening to Peter throughout the years that what is pocket housing, or what are we talking about tonight? So this is the title, purpose, and applicability for pocket housing and the reasons why we do such actions and subdivisions. This is also in your staff report. So this is an aerial photo of the area. As you can see, this is Celtice Way with I-90 and the off-ramp. Riverstone Drive drops down through and into Riverstone, and then John Loop loops around back to Riverstone Drive here. This is the subject property. So some site photos. So this is looking south into the subject property from Riverstone Drive. And this is looking north into the subject property from John Loop. So the decision point we had just talked about is whether or not you guys would approve an 11-lot residential pocket housing preliminary plat for Riviera Court in a C-17 commercial district. These are the findings that need to be made, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested to by the city engineer. And per the city engineer, the preliminary plat contains the requirements that are stated in the municipal code. Here is the slide showing that. Tried to get it as big as possible. Sometimes these are a little bit difficult. I sliced it down to get it as big as possible. So here are the 11 lots. And we'll go through some of this in a moment. Tract A is the open space. If you look closely here, there is a dashed area right here as well as right up here, and that is for future snow storage. Based upon the fact that we do have winters and they are not through streets, it makes it easier to plow since they are going to be public. Here is a little bit cleaner version of that, not showing the utilities, but showing some grading as well as the easements that are talked about in the staff report for utilities that are located on either side, as well as the Tract A, which is the open space. Just an FYI, Tract B and C down here are going to be stormwater, for handling the stormwater, which is described here, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. Inside of your staff report is the list of all of the comments that we have received from our various departments. There was no fatal flaws that were identified. This is stormwater, a traffic assessment. The estimate is between 8 and 11 vehicle trips for local traffic. The streets here, just talking about the internal public street and the access for individual lots from a private street. There are some additional comments for that on page 6 of your staff report. Water assessment. Wastewater assessment, they are perfectly fine with that. Everything needs to be connected. And the fire assessment, which is basically saying that they have vetted this, but they look directly at the final plat to ensure that they have access and protection for each one of the sites. And the planning assessment is what I talked to earlier, is that it's a non-through street, so we asked for the extra areas for snow storage for easier seasonal plowing. So finding B7C is that the preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvement standards. So we had vetted both of those in Chapter 16.40 as well as 16.15 to ensure that those have been met. And I refer you back to findings B, 7B, the staff comments in your staff report for that. Finding B7D is that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. So this is where it bends a little bit, I guess. It's not your traditional style development in a C17 or an R17 zone because they are requesting pocket housing, which does have a bit of a PUD flavor to it, but it's pretty much a pre-approved PUD, if you understand that. I have tried to explain that in the staff report is after each one of those, I describe whether or not Planning Commission looks at that, or does it happen at the time of permit, or does it happen at both stages? And so that's listed there. Theoretically, the applicant could have got, based upon an R17 standard, which is not pocket housing, but if they were to take it to the extent that they possibly could, they could have put 23 units on the property. This request is about an average of 5,247 square feet per unit, which is right here, the 11 units requested. So in an R12 or an R8 or even R17, single family requires 5,500 square feet if it's not pocket housing. So they've come fairly close to the standard that we would require in an R17 for single family. Right, so we had talked about open space a little bit earlier, and here is a blow-up of the open space itself. One of the things I know that Planning Commission has talked about open space in depth recently, and so we wanted to show you what the open space is going to look like. Highlighted in yellow here is the open space that is relatively flat, and it is absolutely usable by all of the users of the development. One of the things that we did require is that there's a grade change on this side of the street, on the north side, and so they're going to end up putting in a rock retaining wall, and we wanted to be sure that the rock retaining wall on any property that is above the retaining wall was not included in the open space because we wanted it to be usable. So this is the result of that, and the description right here that's in your staff report as well explains that. Okay, so there's 10 proposed conditions. Rather than reading through each one of these, I'm sure that you guys have read your staff reports. If you have any questions, we do have city staff here as well as me that can answer most of the questions. And if you have any one that I can't answer, I'll refer to the applicant or the appropriate department. And you must consider this request tonight and to make appropriate findings to either approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. Your findings worksheet is attached, and here is a list of those 4 findings for you. And with that, I am finished. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. That was a good report. Any questions? And we have a question there.
Question, Sean. My only question on this had to do with the open space. As you said, we've had a lot of dialogue on that subject, and this is not a PUD.
Correct.
But if I were to look at that open space through the lens of a PUD, in your mind, what, and your history in the past of usability, it needs to be a certain width and have some usable features and such. If it were a PUD, would it pass muster?
It would. It's not necessarily the 10% that's required in a PUD. In pocket housing, it's a different standard. So you're required to have 300 square feet per unit. It can be part of the lot itself or in the backyard, and privately owned, or it can be aggregated together into a bigger spot that's usable by everybody, which is what the applicant did. It can be no narrower than 15 feet at its narrowest dimension.
Qualitatively is what I'm after. It would be of such a configuration and size and so forth that it would provide some usable value as open space for the owners of that development?
Yes, it meets the code requirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sean, could you describe, it's hard for me to see on the, what track B, C, and D are? Are those swales or track B, C, and D?
Oh, yes, what was your question about this?
What are those? Describe those. What are those tracks?
Those tracks, they're just called tracks on the preliminary plat. As you can see, the stormwater assessment provided by Chris Bates, tracks B and C, which will be owned and maintained by the homeowners association, will provide area for the stormwater to be infiltrated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else? All right. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Okay, is the applicant or the representative here? Come on down, state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Eric Olson. I'm with HMH Engineering, 1302 West Hayden Avenue in Hayden, Idaho. Representing the applicant, Sean did a pretty good job of explaining. I have no points of clarification from...
Now, one quick thing.
Sure.
I have to have you raise your right hand so I can swear you in because
Okay.
it's quasi-judicial. All right, do you
Let's
swear
forget
the
something.
testimony you're about to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. I figured it would anyway, but I have to do that.
So yeah, nothing to clarify from Sean's explanation. This project's been rigorously vetted through staff. We almost came to you with this a couple of months ago, and we had a few more units in it, and we just couldn't come to consensus on city code requirements, and this kind of scaled back version allowed us to do that. The lot sizes on this are very similar to what you see across the way at Riviera Walk, if you're familiar with that project. So similar type of product there. And I don't really have anything to add, but I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant's representative engineer? All right.
Just a quick one, if I could. You know, there's 10 conditions on here, and I assume you are thoroughly familiar with them and okay with them. Is
Yes,
that correct?
I have read them, and I'm okay with them.
Okay, thank you.
Right, anything else? Okay, you're all set for now, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the only person I have signed up to testify would be, I think it's Mike Nicholas. In favor, do not wish to testify. Is that correct? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this that I didn't call? Okay. So you have your rebuttal time, but it doesn't look like you need it. Unless there's anything else you want to come up and tell us. Okay, so that closes public testimony. Anybody working on a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on August 9, 2016, and there being present a person requesting the approval of item S-5-16, a request for the approval of an 11-lot residential pocket housing preliminary plat named Riviera Court on a C-17 zoning district, the applicant being Active West Builders, location plus or minus 1.325 acre vacant parcel in Riverstone west of the 3rd edition, bound by Riverstone Drive north and John Loop to the south. Planning Commission, I make a motion that we adopt the findings, items B1 through B7. On B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer, Gordon Dobler, and this is based on section 16.12.020 of the municipal code. That was duly noted. Finding B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-ways, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian, bicycle facilities, and utilities are adequate. And this is based on all the various staff reports, and to quote Sean, there were no fatal flaws. So thank you for that. Findings B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15, and that all of the subdivision improvement standards also contained in Chapter 16.4 requirements have been met. And then final finding B7D, that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. Sean was good at also showing us the calculation that the request for the number of lots is well within the guidelines as set out for pocket housing requirements. So therefore, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, find that the request of Active West Builders for preliminary plat of approval as described in the application should be approved. However, there are those special conditions that are already mentioned, the 11, is that correct?
I think it was 10.
10.
You're
10
adopting the 10 in the staff report?
Yes, that were already mentioned. So having said that, that's my motion that we approve.
Okay, motion by Ward,
I'll second that motion.
second by Fleming. Any discussion? Okay, time for roll call.
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. S-5-16. Okay. Our next hearing, this is a quasi judicial also. The applicant, thank you. The applicant is Marina Yacht Club, 1000 North Marina Drive, and portions of the Spokane River and Lake Coeur d'Alene surrounding Blackwell Island. So we have a two-part request. One is A, zoning prior to annexation of 172.24 acres from county commercial to city C-17 and northwest, or navigable waters, excuse me, NW navigable waters. This is a legislative item, A-4-16. Does any commissioner have a conflict to declare? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Players, Mike.
This is item A-4-6, application of Marina Yacht Club LLC requesting annexation of approximately 172 acres in conjunction with zoning approval from county commercial to C-17 commercial and NW, which is navigable waters zoning districts, on property located at 1000 South Marina Drive and portions of the Spokane River and Lake Coeur d'Alene surrounding Blackwell Island. Public notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on July 23, 2016, and all other notifications have been made. This is a location map indicating where this property is located. As you can see, this is Spokane River, this is the lake, and this is the 172 acres. As you can see, the city limits go approximately 1,000 feet beyond the limit, and it's tying into this one and connecting into that one. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. Once again, you can see the city limits tying into this part and where it crosses the Spokane River. 172 acres, but 24 acres approximately is on land. The rest is in the water. Here's an annexation map showing the metes and bounds and the description of the property that's being annexed. And here's a historical map of annexations that happened over time. And in 1979, the annexations were over this part before they crossed the river. And in 95, the annexation of the Blackwell Island was the first annexation. And there was also one in 2000, 2008, and then the two this year proposed. Here's the existing zoning of the surrounding area. As you can see, there's C-17 to the north, the C-17 PUD, some more C-17, and then the navigable waters that are in the waterway. If approved, this is what the proposed zoning would look like. As you can see, the navigable waters over here, and then the C-17 located on the land. There are 4 findings that must be met in order to approve an annexation. First one is finding B88, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This property is located in 2 areas of the comprehensive plan. The first one is the Spokane River District, which, as you can see, it's outlined in black, and this property is located here. And the other part of the comprehensive plan is in the Coeur d'Alene Lake Shoreline District. So it extends into 2 comprehensive areas, but they're both are in the stable established areas, which means they don't really, there's much change over time. The comprehensive plan objectives, I mentioned on page 10 of your staff report, a list of them. I'll just read 3 of the ones here. Objective 1.01 is environmental. Objective 1.02 is water quality. And objective 1.03 is water development, to encourage public and private development, to incorporate and provide ample public access, both physical and visual, to lakes and rivers. Finding B9, that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. See page 11 and 12 of your staff report for specific department comments regarding stormwater, street, water, wastewater, and fire. Staff members are here to answer any specific questions that you may have of the staff report and their comments. The wastewater utility has submitted a photo showing where the wastewater lines are, and as you can see, there's a 6-inch force main here that's public, and the privates that connect into this one and this one. This is the existing water service map that shows the existing water line running through the property. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The site is generally flat and in part covers an area over the Spokane River and Lake Coeur d'Alene. There are no topographical or other physical constraints that would make this subject property unsuitable for the annexation request. The following slides will show some site photos of the property. And this map indicates where the photos were taken on the 24 acres. The first one is here. Site photo 1 is facing south through the Marina. Site photo 2 is also facing south. Site photo 3 is looking northeast through the property. Site photo 4 is looking south along the Marina. And site photo 5 is looking towards the restaurant. And site photo 6 is looking towards the north. Here's the first site photo looking south, showing the water and the marinas and the slips. Here's site photo 2 looking south. Site photo 3 looking through the property is an existing maintenance facility, some marina slips. Site photo 4 looking south, more docks and marinas. Site photo 5 showing the existing restaurant, floating restaurant on the river. Site photo 6 looking north through the boat trailers that are existing on the property. Finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. See pages 16 and 17 of the staff report for specific department comments regarding traffic and neighborhood character. But all the existing land uses have been there for many years. The marinas have been there since the 1960s, and the RV park to the north has been there for many years as well. The proposed C-17 zoning district. The C-17 zoning district is intended as a broad spectrum commercial district that permits limited service, wholesale retail, heavy commercial, in addition to allowing residential development at a density of 17 units per acre. The navigable water zoning district is intended to provide for the appropriate usage and for adequate protection of the surface water resource within the city limits. The land use map indicates the commercial uses to the north, navigable waters, so it's surrounded by that. Recommended items to include in the annexation agreement. There are 16 recommended items, including 3 from ITD. See the staff report on pages 18, 19 for the complete list. The annexation of the 172 acres in conjunction with the zoning approval from county commercial to C-17 commercial and navigable water zoning district is the decision point tonight. The Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant's also here to make a brief presentation as well.
Okay, thanks. Good report. Any questions? There's a question.
Thank you. I have a question regarding water. I wonder if I could ask the water experts a question.
You're talking about the clear water, not the brown water.
Talking about water service, not
We have both the experts.
not navigable water. You're not navigable water. You're potable or potable, however.
Potable, yeah.
Potable, I don't know. Mr. Pickle, you know, there's some discussion in here about shared cost for water modeling. That's not a condition per se, but I take that as a recommendation that your department has as a recommended element to be addressed in a future annexation agreement, water modeling. So help me understand, you know, I know there's been some struggles in the past with water, say in the Blackwell Hill area, up on the other side of the river, up above this.
Correct.
Could this water modeling and annexation agreement and annexation, could it work to help you in some way with redundancies or looping or whatnot? Could this benefit some of the struggles that you already have over there?
That's correct. We were looking at the water modeling as far as the domestic use for the planned annexation. That will not affect the residents on the hill. What may be a problem is the required fire flows for the yacht club because they don't have fire services at this time and any planned development in there. So we recommend doing the modeling to look at the recommended fire flows, see whether that existing main will support that or whether it will require the installation of a second river crossing or the addition of a tank up on the hill. So that's what we're looking at this, is sharing some of those costs with the applicant so that we can determine if and when any of those additions would be required to support the not only this but the rest of the island as well.
Ask it a little different. Again, you recognize there's been some issues on Blackwell Hill. Correct. And some struggles.
Correct.
This action of annexation wouldn't make that any worse. It could potentially help things. Is that?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions while Terry's up here about water? Okay. Thanks, Terry. Anything else? Okay, is the applicant here?
I have a question, staff.
Oh, just a second. What?
The amount, the annexation, there was an item that came before this planning and zoning a couple of years ago, annexing this property, and that was approved. It was the same number of acres, the same geographical area? The same,
Are you speaking about for this subject property, that there was the annexation request in the past?
in my notes here, it said this, we had approved this in 2005 for annexation.
Oh, yeah, somewhere in there we did, but then it didn't go through with city council.
And it failed because of the annexation agreement between the city and the applicant. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about what was before us then is the same as before us now.
I don't know if it's exactly the same. The applicant could probably speak to that. I think it's generally the same. I don't know if they went as far out into the water, and I'm not sure if it included that finger of land, so the applicant could probably
Same
speak.
zoning, though.
The same what?
Same
Zoning, correct, yes,
Same navigable water area.
correct, yes.
Okay. Then did we not, a while back, approve the annexation of the east shore of Spokane River that was in the county by NIC? And the council chose not to annex it.
Commissioner
Well,
Ingles
what I
may
see
have a
here is I
recollection of
see
that.
a big, a small gap between the navigable water and the green line for city limits and so forth. So there still remains a portion that is not part of the city. But that's a matter between the city council and NIC. Okay.
Correct. That, there would be a sliver of land that would still be under county jurisdiction.
Now, if we approve this, then the next step is for the matter to go before the city council for their approval and an annexation agreement.
Correct.
Later on this evening, we're going to talk about a PUD agreement, and we'll take action on that. Is that action also something that goes before the city council?
No, the planning commission would make the final decision on the limited design PUD.
So that the city council could have some conversation with the applicant on annexation agreement, but that conversation can't deal with any PUD that we approve.
I think the city council can put conditions on the annexation, requirements to be in the annexation agreement, which may or may not parallel or duplicate the PUD conditions.
But they do not have a say in the PUD.
That's correct.
Now, the PUD can be appealed to the council.
Can the
By either party.
PUD can?
Yeah, it can be
Right.
appealed. If someone doesn't agree with our decision, a party can appeal it to the council. If it's
Very-
not appealed, it stays with us.
So the council does have some role to play in the event somebody appeals it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, John, are you doing the presentation on this? Come on up, state your name, and I'll swear you in.
My name is John Barlow. My address is P.O. Box 1180, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83816.
Okay, John, you swear the testimony you're giving us tonight will be the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you. Now it's not doing it.
You know, I thought that's a lot of acres down there, and I didn't see that many acres, but when you figure the water in, then you've got the acreage.
No, here. Yeah. Please, thank you. Okay, commissioners, thank you for your time. I am representing the Hagan Companies, as I have for going on 37 years, and we're here tonight to talk about the annexation of the property we call Blackwell Island, now operated under our group, Hagan Marine Group. This is an aerial photo of the way the property set up until 2 years ago. And I believe you had a question about the area of the property in comparison to our request in 2006. And I believe it's the same. The difference is that at that time they didn't have a zoning for water. And that's where all this 172 acres is coming from. It's mostly the water involved with annexation. We have been operating the marina in the last, since 2004, and in the last couple of years have found the business to be growing significantly. And we, in the last year, spent a fair amount, several $1 million, improving the operation. And I show you these as a before, and this is an after. This is a picture taken this spring. We have addressed stormwater runoff in all areas. We have curbing where we had no curbing before. We've upgraded the buildings, as you see the difference between there and today. Upgraded ramps. We've brought in more of a sales area that has lighting and facilitates the only on-the-water showroom we know of. And consequently, the business has grown significantly. We've also did improvements to all of the island area, servicing the Cedars restaurant. This is the entryway ramp to the restaurant. And all the water now slopes to drainage swale areas and is properly filtered. And for the 70 years prior to that, it was going basically into the lake. And so, as a result of that, as with our growth in additional business, we've basically come to the point that we're overreaching our utilities, our sewer and water. We have our own well, and we have drain fields, and we believe the right thing to do is to annex into the city and utilize the available utilities. So the annex has been driven by the growth of the business that we have been participating in. And since the property is on the shoreline ordinance applies, and we'll talk more about that in the other hearing regarding the PUD, as that would be the solution that we would utilize for that. So tonight we have before you now the annexation portion of the request. The comprehensive land plan base map designates this property as stable, established. It implies that the area's neighborhood character has largely been established and in general should be maintained. The development we have completed and are expanding upon is consistent with the use of the land in the past. The city comp plan land use designation of river districts states that the area is going through a multitude of changes and the trend will continue for many years. Generally, the Spokane River District is envisioned to be mixed-use neighborhoods consisting of housing, commercial, retail, service activities that embrace the aesthetics of the river. And as the mills and whatnot, looking at the history of this site, have disappeared, this request that we have, the property and operation we have, is consistent with the area. Through such a property, people are connected to the lake and the activities via boating and dining on the water at the Cedars. Page 70 of the comp plan describes Coeur d'Alene shoreline today as a mix of uses from east to west. As the shoreline progresses west, the slopes become less restrictive, giving way to high-end condos, golf courses, beaches, marinas, and restaurants. This is verbiage that comes from the plan and specifically mention marinas and restaurants. In our mind, it is clear that the established and planned uses that we have at Blackwell Island are consistent with the neighborhood and established comprehensive plan. The waterways that are being requested to be zone navigable waters with the NW designation is the only appropriate use. To me, it was a new zoning designation that we hadn't been familiar with, and so the request for NW is appropriate. The marina has been in use since 1965, and NW certainly fits that designation. Requesting the zoning to be C-17 matches the balance of the land on Blackwell Island. This is the zoning map that you saw earlier of the entire zoned area, and this map, I'll leave, shows the area specifically under our ownership that we are requesting the C-17 zoning. Prior to applying for the annexation and the rezone, we met with every department of the city as to what would be required. We felt it was more thorough to know what we were going to be into, and have met with fire, know where they need hydrants for the operation that we have. Again, we have an established use that we're talking about. It's not a development that yet to be considered, so it was easier for us to meet and talk about actual specific locations for water and sewer and so on. We have no problem with the requirements that have been outlined regarding every department that we met with the city. We're requesting zoning for our existing uses and expected uses of a marina facility, including boat sales, boat slips, seasonal boat trailer storage, boat service areas, boat showroom and storage. Our requested overlays deal with the existing and planned marina access. And again, I'll get into those in more detail in the PUD hearing. I might comment, I thought we were having one hearing rather than two, so that's why some of this is integrated. And I have to turn a few pages I didn't plan on turning. So in summary, our zoning request is consistent with the city comprehensive plan, as the property is designated as stable and established. Marinas and restaurants are listed in the comp plan as acceptable uses. All of the existing Blackwell Island property that is presently in the city is already zoned C-17. That includes the Hall property, our property to the north, and the recently annexed and zoned property owned by the city of Coeur d'Alene. The uses we are requesting zoning for are well-established businesses and uses. What it's easy to say in our presentation is what you see today is what you'll get, is what we'll continue operating as. And I believe that concludes the portion that I have regarding the annexation.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thanks, John. All right, any questions of the applicant? Yep.
Mr. Barlow, city staff report here has 16 elements. You mentioned that you've met with staff and you're comfortable with what's been worked out with fire and wastewater and water and so forth. There's 16 elements here. They're not conditions per se, but they're 16 items that staff is recommending be incorporated into an annexation agreement. Have you had a chance to review those?
I have. What I would say in response to the question that you asked of the staff person,
yes, sir.
You said there were 18 items?
I meant 16.
And we just checked, and I think it's 13, is it? So there, I think it's 13. On page 18 of the staff report, we have 13 items.
I think we're probably saying the right thing.
Okay.
There's 13 elements, I think, that were generated by city staff, with 3 that were added on there as ITD requests. So maybe we're talking the same thing.
Could be. I believe that's correct.
But I'm just assessing that you've had a chance to digest those, and I think you just said we're on board. Some of the utilities, it sounds like the private lift station, water modeling, there might be some fairly involved efforts there. But you're saying that more or less you and staff are on the same page, and the developer would be basically footing the costs for those utility extensions, correct?
That's correct. That was the intention of my comment about having met with the different departments.
Thank you.
All right.
So, John,
Other questions?
Traditionally, John, you ask if they agree with all the conditions.
Well, they're not conditions. If you read them, they're not conditions. They are elements recommended for inclusion in a future to be hammered out annexation agreement. And so, there's going to be nuances of those worked out still, but at least it's kind of an outline, is it not, of kind of the major issues that will be addressed. And I guess I'm just trying to assess, do you see any fatal flaws up front in those, let's call it 13 items that staff generated?
I think you've outlined it properly. And we see no fatal flaws. Those are all areas that we've discussed already. As in any area, the devil's in the details when we sit down at the annexation agreement. And those are all items that we know to be on the table and feel that they can be dealt with.
So the last 3 from the Idaho Department of Transportation are not part of
Well,
this?
they had 3 conditions, and none of those bother us at all.
None of those 3 bother
There
you
was
at
a
all?
small traffic study required, some location of where a building would have to be, they are fine.
John asked it much more thorough than I do. We have some conditions or provisions on here. You're aware of them in all 16, and you concur in them in some fashion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Thank you
Thank
for now,
you.
John. Of course, we've got a fairly narrow scope here tonight. We're voting on the recommended zoning prior to annexation, and then all this stuff here with these 18 items and so forth is a council function when they do the annexation negotiation and so forth. Let's see, I've got a fairly short list here. Have, let's see, Ron and Juanita Loveland, neutral. Did you wish to testify? If they're here, I guess, don't see anyone. Is there anybody out there who would like to testify that I don't have on the list? Okay. So, is there anything else that you want to add on this, John?
I see no need.
Okay. All right.
So I would motion that we approve this annexation, support this annexation request, and I would make the following findings. That this matter has come before the Planning Commission tonight, August 9th, 2016. Item A416, request for annexation from county commercial to C17, commercial at 17 units per acre, and NW, navigable water zoning district. Applicant is Marina Yacht Club LLC. Property is located at 1000 South Marina Drive and portions of the Spokane River and Lake Coeur d'Alene surrounding Blackwell Island. In doing the motion, we would adopt findings B1 through B7 as written verbatim in the template, and that B8 be incorporated, which is the finding that the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan policies. As the applicant pointed out, I think the key elements there is that the area comp plan supports the area being an area that's in a state of flux, with a focus on protection of quality of water, recognition that the area is going through a multitude of changes. And as the applicant points out, we're really talking about, long historic use there that we are going to preserve into the future. And the comp plan talks about commercial, residential, and mixed uses being supported in that area. Comp plan talks about public access being provided to the river, and it also talks about balancing public and private entities. And so the comp plan elements that are particularly in play here, and I think the annexation agreement stands up against 1.01, the goal of environmental, 1.02, the goal of protection of water quality, 1.03, goals for waterfront development, as well as the goals for 1.04, waterfront development with protective requirements, 1.05 vistas, and 1.07 the hazardous areas. So I think it stands up well with the comp plan. B9, the public facilities and utilities are available, and that is as vetted by city staff. The report documentation, staff report documentation, and the recommended elements of a future annexation agreement support the statement that utilities are available. B10, finding that the physical characteristics of the staff of the site do make it suitable for the request. Again, it's really the preservation and improvement of an existing use that's already demonstrated its compatibility there. The site is flat, and staff has made comment in the staff report that there's no physical characteristics precluding this action. And B11, that we make the finding that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and existing uses. And that's supported by the fact that we're going to have a traffic study. Again, it's existing and same uses that have been going on there since 1965 or sometime near there. So we're not talking about any change in use there. So conclusion in the motion would be for a decision that the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of Marina Yacht Club LLC for zoning prior to annexation as described in the application should be approved with suggested provisions for inclusion in the annexation agreement. These 16 items, 13 from staff, 3 from ITD, that are, I'm not going to read them. They are as written verbatim in the template. That's the motion.
Okay, thanks. We have a motion by Ingalls.
I'll second them.
Go ahead, John.
I think,
Go ahead.
okay. I guess Rumpler gets the second.
Yeah, I'll second them.
All right, you get the second. Any discussion? Okay, Shanna?
Fleming? Yes. Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay, so that's approved unanimously. A4-16. Then, the other hearing we have tonight, and the second part of this, is planned unit development. This is a proposed 15.61 acre limited planned unit development, Blackwell Island Marina Yacht Club Limited Design PUD. This is another quasi judicial hearing. It's PUD 3-16. Does any commission member have a conflict to declare on this one? Okay. So off we go. It's all yours.
Thank you. This is item PUD-3-16, application of Marina Yacht Club LLC, requesting approval of approximately 15 acres for a limited design plan unit development on property located at 1000 South Marina Drive. Public notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on July 23rd, 2016, and all other notifications have been made. This is a location of the map of the city, and you can see where the property is located, as we've been discussing all along today. It's on Blackwell Island, and part of this PUD will go into the area that was removed. This is just a close-up aerial photograph of the property. The applicant has indicated that significant improvements have been made to the marina over the last few years, and the marina continues to grow. The applicant has indicated that city services, including sewer and water, would accommodate their growth and future plans. The applicant has made application to have their property annexed into the city, which you just heard in application in item A-4-16. And this application for the limited design PUD is contingent upon the approval and completion of the annexation of this property into the city. The applicant has structures located at the marina that are in conflict with the city's shoreline ordinance. If approved, the limited design PUD would allow for these marina structures and facilities to remain and be legal use along the city's shoreline. The city's shoreline ordinance prohibits construction within 40 feet of the shoreline. Areas exempt from this rule are properties located in the downtown core zoning district and other areas stated in the zoning ordinance at 17.08.250. The shoreline ordinance is intended to protect the shoreline from erosion and maintain an open space buffer between development and the water. Typical development along the shoreline has been residential in nature with limited commercial and recreational uses. Typically, marinas have operations with structures that lie within the 40 foot of the shoreline. Marina operations typically consist of sales offices, maintenance and repairs facilities, restaurants, bars, docks, walkway ramps, boat slips, dry boat storage areas over gravel, and dry stack buildings. Typically, marina structures and facilities are in close proximity to the water. The applicant has submitted a site plan indicating the areas within the 40-foot shoreline area that are associated with their marina operation. There are 8 findings that must be met in order to approve a limited design plan unit development. The first finding is finding B8A. The proposal does or does not produce a functional, enduring, and desirable environment. The Marina has operated this location for many years. The applicant has steadily improved this facility over time. Cedar's Restaurant is well-maintained and used by the public to enjoy the food and the view, making this a unique place to dine and enjoy the lake. The applicant is proposing to allow for dry stock storage buildings that will store boats for their customers. Finding B8B, the proposal is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. Once again, this is in 2 areas. I won't go over this in depthly, but it's in the Spokane River District area, which is stable established, and the Coeur d'Alene Lake Shoreline District, which is also stable established. Same comprehensive plan objectives as was in the annexation, the environment, objective 1.02, water quality, and then the waterfront development in objective 1.03. The next finding, the building's envelopes is or is not compatible with or sufficiently buffered from uses on adjacent properties. Design elements that may be considered include building heights and bulk, off-street parking, open space, privacy, and landscaping. The building envelopes being requested are consistent with the marina operation and are compatible with adjacent uses. The proposed building sites are located in areas where there is considerable open space and the property is surrounded by water on 3 sides. The applicant is proposing to locate these structures towards the west of the property and away from the river. This is the applicant's PUD plan. It's broken down into 5 areas. The A is over here. There's B, C, D, E, and F. And I'll go ahead and there's zoom-in photos on each one. Here's a zoom-in location of Area A. Area A goes from here to here, and this Area A is to allow shoreline stabilization, and Area B is to allow restaurant-related facilities and structures up to 20 feet in height and light poles up to 30 feet in height, and to allow for shoreline stabilization. Area C is to allow marina-related facilities and structures up to 20 feet in height and light poles up to 30 feet in height, and to utilize shoreline stabilization. On C is located on this part and on the south part. Areas C, D, E, and F. This is a continuation of C from the previous slide. Area D is an existing structure and that allowed this building to stay and be 30 feet in height. Area E is to allow the structures up to 60 feet in height, and Area E is this area located right here. And Area F is to allow 0.02 parking spaces per dry stack space and inside-outside boat and trailer storage as permitted uses. The next findings, the proposal is or is not compatible with natural features of the site and adjoining properties. Natural features to be considered include topography, native vegetation, wildlife habits, and water courses. The area surrounding the request is relatively flat. There is native vegetation along the banks of the Spokane River and on other areas throughout the property. The proposed limited design PUD is compatible with topography and the native vegetation in the area. These are the same site photos we just seen previously. I'll just kind of quickly go through these, the same locations. This is one looking south through the open area. Site photo 2, 3 of some existing structures on the facility. Site photo 4, the restaurant, and looking north through the staging area for the trailers. Finding B8E. The proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space area as determined by the Commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. The applicant has indicated that the common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes which will continue to be open to the public. The applicant has also indicated that the site plan indicates a 36-foot wide open area through the marina that will continue to be dedicated for open space. This amounts to 1.7 acres and meets the 10% requirement of the PUD. This map is also consistent with the map that was submitted in '05 that had the same open space request. And the open space they're requesting is right here along the marina for canoers and kayakers to continue through the slough and back into the river and to access it this way and to continue to operate through this open space will be open. The location and design and size of the proposed building envelope is such that the traffic generation by the development can be accommodated safely on the minor arterials and collector streets and without requiring unnecessary utilization of other residential streets. See pages 17 and 19 of the staff report for specific department comments regarding traffic and neighborhood character. The proposed setbacks do or do not provide for sufficient emergency vehicle access. The neighborhood character will be protected by adequate buffering and for maintenance of all wall exterior from the development's property. The applicant has indicated that they upgraded and enhanced emergency vehicle access last year. The marina has been in operation at the site for many years, and the neighborhood character would likely not be affected with the approval of the proposed limited to PUD. The buildings are not proposed on the property lines adjacent to other property owners. And finally, finding B8H, the proposed building envelopes does or does not provide for adequate sunlight, fresh air, and usable open space. The property is relatively large and will most likely provide adequate space between buildings to allow for sunlight, fresh air, and usable open space. The proposed dry stack structures will be located toward the west part of the property and away from the river side of the property. Recommended conditions. This PUD is conditionally approved pending the annexation of the subject property into the city. There are an additional 20 recommended conditions, including 2 from ITD. See pages 21 and 22 of the staff report. The applicant has also received a copy of the staff report. The Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And this concludes my presentation. The applicant's also here to make a presentation as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Here we go.
Mr. Chair, before that, you showed the open space. Could you show, what was I missed that.
The open space proposed is this dashed line here, or this peppered line here that's right here that goes through the marina.
So is that on the water?
That is over water.
So where does the public, we have something from Idaho Department of Lands or somebody that said that this does not let them use the lake bottom in certain areas, but there's parts of the marina that they can. Is that?
This must be the area that they're indicating, right through here.
So they are granting open space to the public over the public lake bottom?
Commissioner Lutrip, I can clarify a little bit of that. So this area is actually, part of it's a taxable property for them. It's an area that's been dredged, and so it's kind of shared jurisdiction. It is part of their property, and then part of it is they have to get permits from Idaho Department of Lands, DEQ, and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for some of the dredging and other activities, but the water itself can be used. And in the last go-around in 2005, when this came before Planning Commission and Council, it was approved for open space in the same area, and it's been determined by legal as well that that can be considered open space because it's 10% of the gross land area of the PUD. So hopefully that helps clarify.
So it was land at one time was dredged, it was land, it could have been open space, at that time they dredged it, now it's open space through water?
The requirement for open space in the PUD, and it may be better for Randy to speak to this, it doesn't say the open space itself has to be on land. It says 10% of the gross land area of the PUD is to be open space, so it's a little bit of a nuance.
Well, I didn't hear everything, so I'll change the subject. This shoreline ordinance, How was that developed?
That's a good question. I wasn't here at the time. Hillary, do you have any history on that?
I believe it was because some of the development that was occurring along the shoreline and then the desire to protect the shoreline from development being right along the edge, but also for protection of the water quality, views, et cetera.
Was it a sole determination of the city council, or was the public involved in some fashion?
I can just jump in, because this is ancient history, but that law was passed, there was, I think, normal due process in public hearings. It was done by the city council in the early 1980s. And I think it was in response to a condo that was going to be built downtown on the old inland marine
But
site.
it was a public process, well-considered, well thought out, acted on by the city council, not the electorate.
No, it was,
The city council.
as I recall, it was done by the city council. Yeah, it dates back to the early 80s.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I guess Hillary, you can correct me, but as the city has expanded considerably over the years, it's been interpreted that the shoreline ordinance just expands with the city as the city annexes more land. It applies to anything within the city.
That's correct. As the city annexes and includes new areas along the water, then the shoreline ordinance does apply. There are some restrictions on that, and that's in terms of the maximum height and how the areas that were defined for that. But otherwise, yes, the shoreline ordinance does apply to all the shorelines in the city limits.
There's been a number of PUDs done over the years so the development's been able to work within the shoreline ordinance. We've done quite a few of those. Yes.
Mike, if I could ask you a question, you might want to go to a graphic that shows those areas E and F so we could relate to that. So the question, and this might be kind of a precursor question that the applicant can shore up as well, but we have to make a finding BHC, B8H maybe, I'm not sure, that relating to the envelopes, building envelopes are compatible, that element, or that finding. So something to ponder there, we're talking about buildings that would be 60 feet high in the area E and F. And I'm reading from your staff report, page 3, which in turn references, I believe, the applicant's narrative that says, quote, we are requesting that the 150-foot setback zone that includes the structures of 30 feet high be amended by the limited PUD to 60 feet in height. So these dry stack structures that are going to be in E and F, help me understand what this 150-foot setback zone means to you. You said they're going to be on the western edge, and so they're going to be there, not on the Spokane River edge. They're going to be on the slough edge, the western edge. But with respect to, from the point of the water that's in the marina, do they sit back 150 feet? Is that what that's saying?
150 feet is the distance from the water back to here, and that's in reference to building height limitations within the shoreline. They have to be from 150 feet back, they can only be so high. And they're asking to be higher at this location to be 60 feet within this 150 feet.
So these dry stack buildings would be pretty close to the water.
They would be pretty close to this part of the water, but not the river part.
Not the main river.
Commissioner Ingalls, I want to clarify as well, the 150 feet is also from the shoreline ordinance. There are height, limit, and yard requirements, and item B is for shoreline properties located between 150 feet west of First Street, easterly to 7th Street, and shoreline properties located northerly from River Avenue.
That's how that is.
And so we drew a line across the river where River Avenue is, and then that is where that height limit of 30 feet applies for new structures. It says new structures may be erected provided that the height is not greater than 30 feet. There shall be minimum side yard equal to 20% of the average width of the lot. And so based on that, they were asking for a deviation from that as part of the PUD to allow the 60-foot height.
I get it, thanks.
All right, anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay, John? We have to go through this again. State your name and address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to be sworn in again?
I don't know, does he need to be sworn again? He's still under oath, huh? Okay. Okay.
Let's do it again.
The planner overrode the lawyer. You need to be sworn in again. All right. Do you swear the testimony you're going to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
John Barlow, GRB Properties, representing Marina Yacht Club LLC, to talk about the PUD. And I had the experience of being here during the creation of the shoreline ordinance. It involved the property where the resort sits today in 1984, 83. And SOS was the Save Our Shoreline coalition that really dealt mostly with views and vistas, if you recall. And the concern was a building that would block the views, and the ordinance basically created the 40-foot setback with no construction. And then beyond, at that point in time, there were no other provisions, and over the years, in addition to the, so let me show you. So then the same 40-foot setback is the line you see around the site in the reddish, pinkish color. So that and in this case with this property, it's the entire piece because water is on both sides. And there's a lot of words in the ordinance, but the basic premise is that within the 40 feet, there's no structures. Then at some point in time later, I don't know when, there was an additional provision put in that in the first 150 feet, so essentially from 40 to 150, you can't have a structure higher than 30 feet, and potentially some other provisions. And then as we worked with staff to clarify where that provision applied, through, all of this was through application of land on the other side of the river, and the provision came that this line represents River Avenue, and the 150-foot portion was for land north of River Avenue. So that's why it's here, and it's not here, and it's not here, and then it starts again here, because that's where the 150 feet comes in. So when you go back to what, being a new hearing, being that we're an existing marina in the county, and we are existing restaurant operation in the county, the shoreline ordinance does not accommodate any structures, ramps, gates, whatever involved with both the restaurant, light poles, and with the marina. So therefore, we're here to talk about a PUD overlay. And in order to maintain these existing uses, we've created these areas that Mike talked about, and we've divided them into, I think it's 6 different A through F provisions that are shown on the same exhibit that he showed. So we have existing marina operations around this part of the marina. We have restaurant operations at the far south end of the island, and we have no operations along the river. So we divided this into areas and with the spirit of protecting and endorsing what the ordinance says. So in Area A, we have no structures, but we do want to be able to maintain the shoreline and have stabilization. If you look at the pictures on the wall and all of we've seen in the museum, what this island used to have on it, it was a sawmill with foundations, buried logs. It was a city dump for many years. And so we find from time to time, after erosion events, that the shoreline needs to be worked on. So in Area A, we just want to be able to maintain it. Area B deals with the restaurant. And I know the restaurant's at this far end, but with the provision of sewering, we have to have a lift station in order to pump sewer back to the public main that's by 95. We have transformers, we have controls, and of course currently we have light poles and gates and ramps. So in this area we have a request for structures up to 20 feet in height, light poles up to 30 feet in height, and a stabilization of the bank, as we talked about in Area A, related to the restaurant uses. Area C is all of the area in the ordinance around the marina. So it's here, and it's on both sides of this piece of land. And in Area C, we need to preserve marina-related facilities and structures up to 20 feet in height, light poles up to 30 feet in height, and utilities and other shoreline stabilization required to be a marina. And there's 3.4 acres in total there. Area D simply allows for the area of our sales building that's next to the shoreline now, and there's 0.15 acres of an existing at 30 feet of height to accommodate what's there. Area E addresses this one zone where the 150 feet of shoreline ordinance has a 30-foot limitation. In that area, and I'll talk about dry stack more in a minute, the future of Marina, because of many things, cost and available water space, and largely driven by market, is dry stack buildings. Dry stack Marina is very popular in larger urban areas, Seattle, Portland, all up and down the West Coast. Our people were back in Lake Okanoski last week, and they saw dry stack buildings used there. People like the idea of calling up, having their boat out of the water and out of the sun. For those of you that are boat owners, that's what you work on, is what the water does and what the sun does. And the boat can be placed in the water with several hours' notice. They boat for the day. When they're done, it goes back into the dry stack. It's a summer storage place. It's not a winter storage place. So to accommodate that, some dry stacks are very, very high. Some are fairly low, but if you're in about the 60-foot range, you can get a good number of boats with a smaller footprint of a building. If you're 30 feet, then you got to have twice as much building. And so that's why we've requested it in this area E, and as the staff report mentions, it's in an area that we already have buildings, and felt that was appropriate. And then area F is all the rest of this area, and it deals with the accommodation includes the permitted uses of inside and outside boat and boat trailer storage, boat showrooms, boat sales, and other related boat uses. There is no ordinance in Coeur d'Alene for dry stack parking, so we're proposing as the same standard that's used in other municipalities of 0.2 spaces per stored boat, or 1 space per boat, because everybody doesn't come at the same time. And then lastly, the aforementioned 36 foot of open space That was actually originated during our permit activities and is a part of our permit with the United States Corps for the dredging and improvements of the island. Public comment during that process that took 3.5 years was that this is a popular kayaking and paddleboard route that goes through the marina. People go down through the slough, out the BLM, and back out the lake, or vice versa, and often they turn and go off into Cougar Bay. And when it says open space, it means that we cannot construct any marina facility within that footprint. And so that's where it comes from. And then this is a very unique property in that it's the majority of the area is in the county. We pay taxes on it as land. It's part of our parcel. And it goes back to the origination of when it was, I guess, in statehood, there was no water there. So in summary, our zoning request, let's see, that's my first part. The areas we've requested for conditions are completely and fully respect the 40-foot shoreline ordinance. If it wasn't that we've got to have access to be in the marina business. So if we can't accommodate these, we can't annex because we have to stay in the county in order to have access if we don't have the PUD overlay we've requested. The investments we've made in the last 2 years prove our commitment to the marina and restaurant uses. They're not just pie in the sky request and then we do something different. And we're merely asking for changes in the city will allow us these same operations to continue as they have been. I was just noting that one of the questions talked about building envelopes compatible in Area E, but I think I covered that sufficiently. And then I did want to show a picture of a pair of dry stack buildings that I'm not sure where they're located. It is a Cobalt dealer that we're affiliated with, but our people sent this over at Hillary's request this afternoon. So, are there any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
The existing buildings that the tall dry stack will be adjacent to, what are the heights of those buildings in approximate range?
I would guess in the 30-foot range or so. I'm just guessing somewhere.
I've done some dry stacks actually, but they were in the Middle East.
Pardon?
I've done dry stack buildings in the Middle East.
Oh, okay.
Boat heaven. But the height does concern me. And I was concerned that if you're running it from your front line where the peachy colored is to the actual Marine Drive, would you see that building extending that full length? Because you do want to cram in as many boats as you can into that tall building. Would you see it stretching all the way from Marine Drive right to the boundary? That you
I don't believe so. I mean, that would be a huge number of boats.
Yeah, we can only handle so many more boats on this
Right.
lake.
Keep in mind that outside of this line, and so you said to Marina Drive.
Yeah, would you take it as far as some of your buildings that are currently there up
Right.
against the Marine Drive? Is that what your thought is, that the dry stack
Well, we
would go
need-
that far forward?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We need them close enough to the water that when we take them out,
Load
we
and
can
drop.
drop them in.
Right.
But keep in mind, if we go outside of this line, then there is no height restriction.
Correct. I'm aware of that.
So we felt that 60 feet, which is a reasonable height for dry stack, and you currently can put 30 feet in this location, that 60 feet would be acceptable with the understanding that it could be 200 feet or 100 feet if it's just beyond that line.
Right.
Or if they're over here, anywhere in this area, we could put them up to the 40 foot at any height. So I'm very serious when I say that we developed this with respect to what the shoreline ordinance spirit is. This is, as the staff report says, this is the most inconspicuous location for new buildings. We already have buildings in that location. One of our photos here shows a view of the Marina. No, I don't have that one. But if you're on Highway 95, when you see the Marina, you're above all of that, and you look right over it anyway.
Descending onto it, right.
So the view, then other than that, there's nobody other than the highway that's going to have a view of the buildings. And then with the hillside, all the homes in that area, they all look over 30 feet or 60 feet or whatever. So we felt that in this area is the most appropriate area that we would like to put them. It works well from an operational point of view. And the 150 feet allows us to get close enough. Actually, it's from 40 feet to 150, but it allows us to be close enough to easily drop the boats in the lake at the ramp.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barlow, I think Lynn raises a valid concern, and I shared some concern initially, and I think all of us that sit in these chairs up here, when you go through a big, thick staff report, you kind of sift through it and see what the big issues are. And the dry stack jumped out to me. I went to YouTube and looked at a couple. They're pretty cool operations and stuff, and I'm more comfortable that they're really right there by Marina water, not natural Spokane River water on the other side. I wanted to, but still, they are tall, and you know they are what they are. I guess in my mind, I started to think, and I'll throw this at you to get your comment here. But if you look at that graphic where the far right end of the slide is kind of the extent of the floating marina, correct?
Right here?
No, the far right side of
this side.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, in a way, you know, a little bit of height for these dry stacks. Every boat that's in there, and there'll be a good number of them, is a boat that's maybe not in necessary expansion. You know, every year, you know, there's more and more people that want to be on the lake. So, I mean, in a sense, if they're not accommodated in the racks, you got to build more docks, and there's a negative with that, you know.
Well, if you think about the surface area, when you go vertical and you compact them, it does preserve more open space. And it's driven in the municipal areas by cost. There's not available land available. In Seattle has all kinds of dry stack. And people, you can say what you want about too many boats, but you can say that about the other guy, but you want your boat. And people want to be on the water. And being on the water is a part of why we live in this area. And these are boats that are out of the water. They don't drip oil. I mean, there's a lot of great environmental points to it. The only guy here that I don't think would want dry stack would be Skip Murphy, because he wants to build a dock. But we have plenty to be repaired.
Any other questions?
John,
You got one?
No, thank you.
Mr. Barlow, did you consider any mitigating items for us to consider for the city on with the offset of the shoreline waivers? I mean, we're modifying the shoreline ordinance quite a bit. With have you given any thought to any mitigating issues you could provide the public?
Yes, we're going to spend close to $1 million putting in the infrastructure that we have to have. We're going to start paying taxes to the city that haven't been paid forever. Those are significant mitigating items. And all of this is for the basis of people to utilize the lake, the marina, and the restaurant. And so we feel that it's a very fair proposal. But I don't, there are a lot of taxes involved. And the decision to annex into the city was not an easy decision, as you might imagine, after what we've been through already in the past that isn't worthy of much discussion, but it was a difficult decision.
So what type of dollar figures is the city looking, will the city receive? What kind of mitigation
Well, I
dollar
would
amount?
have you wanted, I think you should talk to Troy about that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's a sizable, when you take that kind of acreage, there's a lot of value there.
I understand that. My issue is the city has a shoreline ordinance, and you're asking, the applicant's asking for several variations to that. And I'm struggling myself with those variations. You have a portion there, I guess it's Part A, where you're going to follow the shoreline ordinance. But that's a limited use, I believe, to the city, to the general public.
Well, there's no structure along the river. That's a mitigation.
Okay.
Let me put it another way. I was chairman of Jobs Plus for many years. We would do anything to get a company to come and spend the kind of money that we've spent in the last 5 years and will spend with this. We've created hundreds of jobs. We have kids from the NIC training who now work on engines and service boats. They have really good jobs. These are jobs that didn't exist until we started selling more boats. As these businesses grow, it isn't just property tax, it's everything else that goes with a growing and vibrant business. Last Saturday's paper, there's a new business going to the old Harper's building in Post Falls. Every city in the area they'll give them the water. They'll abate their taxes because of somebody willing to invest and spend money in our area is a huge advantage. And to go beyond what we've proposed of a mitigation, beyond what we've recognized with the shoreline ordinance, I'm not sure that's appropriately necessary.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, Lou?
Mr. Chair, John, a couple of
Yes.
things. Could you give us a general estimate in the dry stack buildings that you're kind of planning to build, about how many boats at full capacity would that represent?
Well, they're flexible enough, if you saw, that it could be from 100 to whatever you wanted to build. The market of how many boats can be marinaed and stored at a site in our small community is not going to be anywhere near what you'd see in the big metropolitan areas where Seattle has 4 million people within an hour's drive. So I can't honestly tell you. I would think if we had a building or buildings that got up to 200, we have 267 slips today. And a building of 200 would almost double the marina. Well, that to me would be significant. But as you know, perhaps, Commissioner, a 200-boat dry stack is not all that big a building.
No, Everett has 150 boats in theirs, and their stack isn't even up to 40 feet on the top line. So you can pack in almost 200 boats in a very tight space if you tier it properly.
But it's driven by, I mean, our economy in this area, there are people that have boats, and but it's limited by the demographics of where we are as well. Yeah. And
Mr.
so
Chair,
I don't know that I can tell you
I appreciate
exactly.
John, I appreciate your answer. And,
Yeah.
And I think that the commission knows that I've spoken previously on the economic development opportunities that waterfront, whether it's the lake or the Spokane River, few communities have that. It's a precious commodity. Appropriate husbandry of the shoreline and the assets that make use of the shoreline are critical for long-term economic development of this community. And I think that what you're proposing is in line with that. I think you have to provide additional capacity if we're expecting the community to continue to grow. just the one site that you're referring to in Post Falls. I assume there'll be boat owners, we would hope, coming from that development.
Right.
And to think that you would keep the marina static, doesn't make sense. I like the idea of growth.
Yeah.
I like the idea of supporting growth, and I think you've got a very coherent plan here.
Well, thank you. When I look at this photo, we're really proud of the way it looks now. It was pretty bad. I mean, that's not much to be proud of. And it's a big commitment by Mr. Hagenon and the company, and this just furthers our commitment of where we want to take this. But obviously, to spend what we spent, we're not about to tear that out and turn it into something else.
All right. Any other questions of Mr. Barlow? Okay, I think you're all
All right,
done
thank
for
you.
now. Thanks for your presentation. Okay, so now we're into public testimony. I have several names on the list. I think a lot of these people left, but I need to call the names out anyway. I have Matthew Hall, Ann Hall, Mark Hall. I think they're all gone. And I have Dave, is it Albrock on Lakeview? Dave, is there a Dave here that wants to testify? Okay. So that's all the names I have on the list. Is there anyone that wants to testify on this matter I didn't call? Okay. And you don't really have any other testimony to add? So that closes the public testimony then. Is anyone working on a motion?
Sure, I'll go for it.
Thank you.
So this would be a motion to support, and I'm going to make it in the form of findings in support of this. So this matter has come before the Planning Commission tonight, August 9th. PUD 3-16, request for a limited planned unit development known as Blackwell Island Marina Yacht Club Limited Design PUD. Applicant is Marina Yacht Club for a plus or minus 15.6 acre parcel located at 1000 South Marina Drive. And in making the findings, we would adopt findings B1 through B7 as are in the template, worksheet, I should say. Adopt a finding of B8 that B8A, that is, that the proposal does provide a functional, enduring, and desirable environment. As Commissioner Rumpler pointed out, it's good for growth, good for jobs. It is a preservation of current use and allows for improvement of an asset that's been there since 1965. It also preserves continued public access to restaurants, marina facilities, as well as the open space that's embodied in this are all positives that relate to B8A. B8B, that the proposal is consistent with the comp plan, and I would ask if I could, rather than reiterate that whole spiel from the previous one, if the scribe could do a cut and paste of my verbatim comments, because it really is the same from what we said in the previous. Okay, I see a nod
Done that
there.
before and incorporated your comments from the other motion.
Yes. And so that allows us to move along a little quicker.
Yep, and the staff's nodding, so it all looks
So we're
pretty good.
moving on to B8C, and in short, it syncs up nicely with the comp plan per the annexation that this is embodied in. B8C, the building envelopes are compatible with and are sufficiently buffered from uses on adjacent properties. The design elements that may be considered and we looked at the heights and bulks and proximity to the river versus the slough. The setback is, from the back from the 40-foot line, the 60-foot height, and the nature of the dry stack buildings that we have seen pictures of are an indication that the envelopes would be compatible with the existing marina uses and surrounding environment. B8D, the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining property, and we have looked at the natural features of topography, vegetation, wildlife, habitats, and so forth, basically supported by the staff comments on page 13 that basically says that, it's compatible with the topography and vegetation. B8E, the proposal does provide private common open space as required, and we've seen the 1.7 acres that is the kind of open water to the public for use for kayaking and paddleboarding and such. B8F, the location, design, and size of the proposed building envelope is such that the traffic generated by the development can be accommodated safely on minor arterials and collector streets without requiring unnecessary utilization with other residential streets. And I think that finding is supported by the staff report and analysis by the city's city engineer. B8G, we talked about that the proposed setbacks do provide adequate emergency vehicle access, as the staff report has comments from the fire department and their analysis, and they are supportive. Neighborhood character is preserved, its existing use. B8H, the proposed building envelope will provide for adequate sunlight, fresh air, and usable open space. And I guess that's based on a judgment of the Planning Commission, as we have seen the exhibits that it would provide for air and usable open space and sunlight and such. And that the proposal ensures that adequate provisions have been made with respect to flood and landside hazards. And so in conclusion, and as the decision motion, that pursuant to the aforementioned, we would find that the request for the Marina Yacht Club Limited Design Plan to Use Development should be approved. There are special conditions that would be recorded that I will not read, but I would reference as those that are on page 3, 4, and 5 of the staff report, and that would be by reference 21 special conditions indicated there to be included. That's the motion.
So, a motion by Ingalls.
Second.
And we have a second by Messina. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I will be voting against this motion for two reasons. I believe it is not compatible with our comp plan, and I believe it is not compatible with our shoreline ordinance.
Okay. Any other discussion? I just say, from my personal opinion, this is one of the first properties you see as people approach the city from the south and drive in here. So for me personally, I commend you for all the improvements you're doing out there. I think seeing a high quality of design and development here reflects well on the city. You know, when people drive in here and see their first impression of the city, because it's one of the first properties that you notice as you drive in from the south. It's hard to believe in the early 1960s, they had pits out there and burnt garbage on that property, but you know, a lot of areas around the lake were industrial areas back then in those days, so it's come a long ways.
I would like to add as a comment, you know, Commissioner, I respect you greatly. I respect your position, your statement. However, I think the very essence, the nature of a marina is just patently at odds with, you know, a shoreline ordinance. You can't have one without some structures by its very nature. And I think what we are looking for here is kind of a spirit and intent kind of a thing. I think, you know, you got to look at the broader brush here, that it is a marina. We're only trying to make an existing marina, an existing restaurant, existing structures there better. They put the money into them already and just need to hook it up to sewer. So a lot of this is just a matter of grandfathering in, you know, marina stuff that just, you know, there's no other marina in town that would meet it strictly anyway. But I think you have to look at a little broader brush.
Well, don't mistake my feelings. I believe it is the project is nice. I believe the current marina is very pretty. You know, you say grandfather. Boy, I'd sure like to have had some discussion on grandfathering. As I understand it, the marina needs to, if they choose to expand, which they are, they need to hook up to the city's water and sewer, which is fine. That's what it's there for. But in some spirit of things, it would seem that they could also provide, I shouldn't say, I don't want to personally, that there would be possible abilities to provide more in the shoreline, compatible shoreline ordinance, et cetera. We disagree on part of it, but I do not disagree that it's a nice marina and within the county, and if it comes into the city, within the city. There's no question it's a piece of work, a positive piece of work.
Okay, anything else? All right, Shanna, roll call.
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but do we have a second? I know we had the motion by.
I seconded it.
I'm sorry,
Second.
okay, thank you.
Tom did.
But thanks for keeping an eye on me, though, because I need it from time to time. Okay, I forgot where we were.
Messina.
Fleming?
Just voted yes.
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Lutrip?
No.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay, so that's approved. I guess it's 5-1. I'm counting here, there's 6 of us. So that's approved. PUD 3-16. Now we need a motion for adjournment, and I guess we'll get together again in September.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second by Fleming, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? No one's opposed.
Let's stay.
Blow their elbow upstairs.